I created Unarchigal Modalities of Resistance as a part of my recent master's thesis in 2023 titled Using Postcolonial Radical Feminist Autoethnography to Explore Self-Directed Learning Within Home Education. Unarchigal became both a path and a funnel that allowed me to sit with complex and often deeply uncomfortable emotions that did not always require a solution, an outcome, or a conclusion. Some of these reflections and emotions are unfinished and continue to evolve like a tapestry that continues to be woven. A post-colonial feminist autoethnographic approach allows me to explore and disrupt the fluidity between the researcher and researched, while also delving into the cognizant tensions of traversing through white spaces through dual, multiple, and intersecting identities. Hence, the conceptualization and perception of data, its collection, and the power dynamics differentials between a researcher and a research participant or research partner will be explored through these approaches and reflections. This is perhaps best encapsulated by the following paragraphs on pages 27-28 of my thesis within the section titled Autoethnography and Postcolonial Radical Feminist Autoethnography. How do they differ? Autoethnography has intersects with critical race theory, Delgado and Stefancic, 2013, which considers race to be systemic and shaped by socio-political frameworks influencing the legal system, legal and media discourse, which are symbiotic. It also pushes against rationalist and positivist thinking, which demands objectivity and numbers. However, the history of autoethnography predates its usage and coinage within the Western episteme. For example, I was profoundly inspired by Arab women's poetry, Abdullah al-Udari 2017, which were rendered via deeply immersive writings as a response to identity, sex, gender, resisting the male gaze, and traversing through life spanning a period of 5,000 years. This poetry sought to be emotive while seeking to situate the voice, the narratives, and the observations of those who embraced their power, exerted defiance, were oppressed, and also systemically excluded in spaces, thus offering resistance to the embodied power differentials that existed and continue to. I reflected on the challenges traversed by autoethnographers and on post-colonial feminist activism and scholarship, which sought to intervene in response to men who were proponents of post-colonial theory but were primarily focused on nation building after the extirpation of colonies due to European colonization. The significant difference between autoethnography and post-colonial radical feminist autoethnography is that I draw inspiration from my Arab sisters in summoning my resistance to patriarchy in its various forms, including its impact on masculinities, by situating my voice as someone from a former colony which continues to be steeped in coloniality. When I searched and explored post-colonial radical feminist autoethnography as a term, it did not exist. But autoethnography as a feminist tool and deep post-colonial autoethnography have been explored and written about. Post-colonial writers, scholars, and activists like Lord 1983, Hooks 1984-1994, Mohanty 1984, Curiel and Diru 2021, and Venkateshwaran 2021, to name a few, are all post-colonial radical feminists who have engaged in autoethnographic work. Their resistance echoes much of what we tend to do and what we have done all our lives, where we tend to just do and be without coining a term that requires validation within the Western episteme. Chawla and Athe, 2017. I further expand upon Unarchigal within my thesis as such. Unarchigal, which means emotions in Tamil, my mother tongue, seeks to disrupt the current normalized modalities that are colonialist and steeped in white hegemonic praxis. We are all made up of emotions, and emotions not only are seen as unnecessary, and heightened emotions are also ascribed to femininity as a defining trait that usurps one's mind and renders them incapable of logic. Ahmed, 2017. However, Emotions are needed and necessary in our bid to survive, fathom how to make sense of the world, and how we traverse it together. Simply put, Unarchigal is our conduit for learning, and much as we would like to remain detached, we cannot. Page 30. Resistance and disruption are concomitant with dismantling, and this takes a toll on the body, as the mind and body are acutely connected. And hence we feel, react, and respond as we continue to receive, experience, and process emotions. The resistance I was engaged in at the Scottish Government subcommittees on education and anti-racism while being subjected to repeated forms of violence. Racism, ableism, sexism caused my body to store stress around my hips and back, eventually causing my lack of mobility. Bodies store memories, an array of feelings and primeval responses, in the same way decolonial feminist philosopher Favela, cited in Trejo Mendes 2023, refers to everyday memories and enfleshed resistance. Trejo Mendes 2023. Hence, Unarchigal, via its fluidity, troubles this long-accepted Western hegemonic rigidity and conformity posed by the separation of method and methodology, as this approach stems from multitudinous emotions relating to severe lassitude while traversing colonial systems of education and living. These systems are racist, ableist, sexist, patriarchal, and heteronormative, alongside the coloniality that internalizes and replicates this. Unarchigal has undergone a process of ligature, convulsing, and metamorphosis over the years, resulting in its germination within this dissertation. Schlabanganes, 2018, quoted in Sheikh 2021, page 119, insightful observation about imperial approaches expresses this succinctly. The very idea of methods follows the imperial need for certainty and stability. It is antithetical to ambiguity and flux. Page 31. Anger is a very pivotal part of Unarchigal, and I raise the context of anger, its potency, viscosity, its transformative capacity, and therefore the recognition of pluriversality around harnessing anger, as opposed to the dichotomy of emotions as positive and negative. Pluriversality and pluriversal knowledge systems, as Schlabangene 2021 discusses, offer resistance to Western hegemonic impositions. Whose oppression and responses to understanding oppression is privileged? Why is anger not an appropriate response to oppression? Anger informs our agency and autonomy as a response to violence. The imposition to seem cold, unaffected, and polite within whiteness as an appropriate response to oppression only amplifies the cycle of abuse, violence, and reiteration of power hierarchies. As Lord 1987 states, women respond to racism. My response to racism is anger. I have lived with that anger, ignoring it, feeding upon it, learning to use it before it laid my visions to waste for most of my life. Once I did it in silence, afraid of the weight. My fear of anger taught me nothing. Your fear of that anger will teach you nothing also. Women responding to racism means women responding to anger. The anger of exclusion, of unquestioned privilege, of racial distortions, of silence, ill use, stereotyping, defensiveness, misnaming, betrayal, and co-optation.